Hello and welcome to Original Soundchat, where video game music is a work of art. On each episode, it's our goal to help you learn about 2 soundtracks from the world of games, as well as the people, stories, and critical tracks behind them. My name is DeVader.
And I'm Peter Spezia. We're brought to you by Anonymous Dinosaur and Rhymes with Asia. It's time to appreciate great OSTs and the games that they come from without getting too bogged down in music theory. Joe, what are this week's games?
Up first is 2009's Steins, the story of a group of college students accidentally making the scientific discovery of the century and attracting the attention of some dangerous individuals as a result.
Following that is the Bethesda post-apocalyptic adventure set in Boston, where the sole survivor of Vault 111 must avenge their spouse and find their son. 2015's Fallout 4. Time jumps. Now, Fallout 4 certainly does not have the time travel involved that Steins Gate does. But when you wake up from 210 years of being frozen, that's a pretty big leap in time, you might say.
It's a far bigger one than you'd find in Steins Gate.
Well, I mean, that's good, but yeah, I think that might be the only similarity to draw between the two games, unless we discover some today, but soundtracks certainly worth talking about.
Honestly, I can't imagine we're going to find anything else like at all. If we do, I will be shocked.
Well, Joe, how are you doing, and what are you playing?
Well, obviously, as every week, I've been playing a lot of Holocure. I have 2 achievements left before I have all the achievements in the game, which is weird to me because I'm not usually that kind of player. I don't platinum games. I can count the number of games I've 100% completed like on one hand, and I guess this is one of them for some reason. I also finished Bomb Rush Cyberpunk.
Yeah!
That game is good. It is very good. That soundtrack is definitely going to rank highly on my top 10 at least. We'll see where it lands on the best of, but I can pretty confidently say it probably has a spot on the best of 2023 as of this moment.
Yeah, that's good to know. It's from what I've heard so far, it's definitely up there for sure. I haven't been playing anything, haven't really had time to, though I'm in an interesting spot where there's Sea of Stars, and I have Final Fantasy 16 installed on my PlayStation 5. And then this little game that everyone's talking about called Starfield is either out already because you paid extra money for it, or it's out very shortly. And I'm curious to give it a try on Game Pass. I'm not expecting too much from it, but yeah, to try to juggle the idea of 3 games sounds like a lot. Instead, I'm watching my fiance play through Persona 4 Golden for her first playthrough of that game, and she is in heaven and very salty about it. So, yeah, that's where we're on. She's having a good time. You definitely miss a lot of the things, the quality of life improvements, both in battle and in the city or town, I guess, in Forrest's case, the living. You miss a lot of the nice things that they've added. Even things like the bathroom in LeBlanc that they added in 5, of just like, how far are you away from your next personality level up? Yeah, really miss that in 4. Just endless runs to Aya during the rain.
All I remember, because since I replayed it like at the end of last year, all I remember is in battle, at a certain point, I was just like, I miss Baton Pass so much.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's obviously the biggest omission in battles, and then it's crazy. Crazy. But that's about it on the current game front. Let's talk about some composer follow-up news. Got one headline from the game industry this week worth bringing up how it ties to composers and things like that. Although, a game headline overall, it's Super Mario Brothers Wonder Direct. That was interesting. It's nice when you have infinite money and you can just workshop ideas for a long time, but that's Nintendo, and we'll see how that soundtrack comes along. As far as Rift of the Necrodancer goes, they announced some of the composing team members. Danny Baranowski, obviously we know he's going to be the main composer, but it's Danny Baranowski and friends. So who are the friends? And they also posted some song samples. So other composers include Josie Breckner, Jules Conroy, Sam Webster, Nick Nussbaum, and Alex Mukala. They may have a demo at the next Steam Fest. Fingers crossed. That'd be really neat. But it's good to see some familiar names in there with Danny Baranowski.
I hope they have a demo at the next Steam Fest. Right now, as we're recording, PAX just opened today, and they have a demo at PAX. So they have a playable demo. Here's hoping it shows up on Steam. I think the one I'm most pumped to see on that list is Alex Mukala, who they saved for last because I think they knew that was going to be a hype announcement for a lot of people. I think this might be his first time doing original music for a game.
Yeah, that'd be sweet. I'm really looking forward to seeing that.
All right. But this is not Rift of the Necrodancer. This is a show where I'm going to talk about Steins Gate. So let's get real anime. The next 2 weeks for me, by the way, going to be real anime. Just so you know.
Hold on to your butts.
So, Steins Gate was originally released as an Xbox 360 exclusive in Japan. That I did not know.
What?
It was released on October 15th, 2009. A PC release would not happen in Japan until the following year on August 26th, 2010. Japanese releases on the PSP and on iOS would happen in 2011, PS3 in 2012, and then the PS Vita and Android in 2013. It would not see a worldwide release until even after all that, because it would not come out for PC until March 31st, 2014, outside of Japan. And then PS3 and Vita would follow in 2015, and then iOS in 2016. It was developed by 5PB, which is now known as Mages, and Nitroplus. Various versions in Japan were published by 5PB, Nitroplus, and Karakawa Shoden. And overseas, the versions that came out here were published by JAST USA, P-Cube, Mages, and Spike Chunsoft, who is the current publisher on Steam, I believe. It is part of the Science Adventure series, which started in 2008 with the game Chaos Head, and Steins Gate is the second main entry in this series. So Steins Gate is actually part of a larger series, not like a connected series, though I think they all take place in the same universe. I'm not 100%. I know apparently Steins Gate characters show up in at least one other game, like a Steins Gate character shows up. I don't know. So what is Steins Gate? It is a visual novel in which the player takes on the role of Hoin Kyoma, a genius mad scientist bent on spiraling the world into chaos, and is always looking over his shoulder for agents of the organization who secretly control the world. Except that's all bullcrap. None of it's true. He is not a genius. He's not a mad scientist. He is not feared and wanted the world over. He's actually an 18-year-old Japanese college student named Okabe Rintaro. He is what we call a chunibyo, which is a Japanese term for people, usually teenagers, who delude themselves into believing they have cool anime backstories to make themselves seem cooler and more interesting, usually unaware that all this actually does is embarrass them and everybody around them.
I did not know that this had a term for it. That's amazing.
Chuni is the shorthand for it, but chunibyo is the full name. So, Okabe lives in Tokyo, spending most of his time in Akihabara at the Future Gadget Laboratory, which is basically just a clubhouse where he spends time with his friends Shina Mayuri and Hashida Daru Itaru. Here they build future gadgets, which are actually just things taped or soldered to other things, and usually they're completely useless, such as a drone with a camera attached, but they imply it's attached to the propeller. So
what
is the way they describe it is that you can fly this drone and it has a camera on it, but because the camera is spinning, you get motion sick pretty fast. So it can't last very long.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, interesting when you're thinking of future gadgets that actually come true.
Yeah, remember, this was 2009. That type of drone, it might have existed, but it sure as hell wasn't something you could just go into a store and buy like it is now. Also, one of them is just a glow stick that was made into a toy lightsaber. There's one that's just a fog machine. I don't even remember what they call that one. So one day, when Okabe and Mayuri are attending a press conference by a Dr. Nakabachi, who claims to have figured out the theoretical basics of time travel, Okabe encounters a girl named Makise Kurisu, recognized as a genius and child prodigy in the scientific world. Things take a sudden turn when Okabe later encounters Kurisu again, but now lying face first in a pool of blood, having been murdered. When Okabe sends an email to Daru about Kurisu's murder, mysteriously, everybody on the street around him suddenly disappears, and a satellite-like object has crashed into the side of the building he and Mayuri were just in. Things get even weirder when Okabe and Daru attend a guest lecture at their school, only to find that the lecturer is a very much not murdered and alive Makise Kurisu. Then things get even weirder when Daru reveals that he had actually received Okabe's email from earlier in the day, 2 weeks ago. It turns out that the Future Gadget Laboratory, through their gadget, the Phone Wave, Okabe exclusively refers to it as its full name, which is the Phone Wave name subject to change. I will not do that because Okabe can jump in a lake. It's a microwave that can operate remotely using your phone. You can text it or call it, and it will, and turn it on and set the time and everything from your phone. That's the whole idea.
So a smart microwave. Got it.
Pretty much. But they've accidentally created a time machine using that can send data into the past.
Okay.
So together with Kurisu, the group begins to study this newfound discovery, which eventually gains the attention of an international research institution who's also been studying time travel and will seemingly stop at nothing to get their hands on the technology and silence anybody who gets in their way. And what follows is a story about changing timelines, escaping possible death, and discovering dark secrets hidden within the shadows of science. And in terms of gameplay, it plays like a visual novel. There's not a lot of interactivity, but instead of like dialogue options, which is how a visual novel usually goes, at any point in the game, the player can pull up Okabe's cell phone, on which he will occasionally receive emails from other members of the cast. And at times, these emails will have selectable keywords, and selecting one will decide how Okabe replies to that email, essentially picking what he's going to focus on when he replies. Picking certain things could unlock bonus content. They could reveal more backstory about the characters, but they also serve as the method of unlocking the game's true ending. I used a guide for this game because I cannot imagine how anybody figured out how to find the true ending without one, because it requires you to make like 15 specific responses to a specific conversation that happens throughout the game.
Wow, that's insane. Okay.
It's a lot. So I don't know how people discovered that back in the day, but whatever. So the questions are, what are the implications of this time travel discovery? Can sending emails into the past really change the timeline? What is the significance of Kurisu's seemingly undone demise? And what about the other mysterious players that enter into Okabe's life from here, such as the shy and quiet Kiryu Moeka or the part-timer at the CRT shop below the lab, Amane Suzuha? And this is where I will ask, what are your experiences with Steins Gate?
It's a game that has certainly caught my eyes as, playing visual novels like Danganronpa. Steins Gate was one that came up as like, oh, it's a really good visual novel game. And so I put it on my Steam wish list at the end of 2016. And here we are, almost 7 years later, and I still have not bought it. I still have not played it. It seems like a game I'd like. I recognize the characters of Kurisu and Okabe just visually and how they look. It's like, oh yeah, I've seen that character design before, and I know it's about time travel. I didn't know anything about a phone wave.
I didn't either.
That's something. Yeah, a game I would like, I think, but just have not played.
I played it earlier this year. It helped that I could play it on the Steam Deck because, man, that thing is great for visual novels.
Oh, I can imagine.
You could just treat it like a book before bed. You just lay in bed and you read a book and then you turn it off and you go to bed. It works super well. I loved it. I thought it was great. Might be among the better time travel stories I've ever experienced. It's up there, definitely. Kurisu is the best, and anybody who tells you otherwise is a liar. They're lying through their teeth. In fact, while talking to like our two friends that have experienced Steins Gate either through the anime or through the game itself, the first question they asked me was, so Kurisu's best girl, right? And I was like, it's literally no contest. There's nobody else as good as her. Not to say any of the other characters are bad. And to be fair, Kurisu's ending is not my favorite ending in the game, but that's for another time. I enjoyed it quite a lot, and the soundtrack was very good. This was actually, by the way, suggested a long time ago by our friend Fossils, who was also trying to get me to play the game at that time, and I wanted to play it before I brought it to the show. And luckily I was finally able to do that. And it was kind of an accidental called shot, and we'll get to why later. But that is a good game. And I do agree. I think you would like it, honestly.
Kurisu gives big Kyoko Kirigiri vibes. Fair or not?
She certainly thinks she does.
Okay.
She gets a lot more flustered a lot easier than Kyoko. Okabe and Kurisu have a very bantery relationship where they poke fun at each other, especially Kurisu at Okabe, because she is one of the two people in the game that tell him to his face, like, dude, you're being cringe, shut up. So she has moments that are very Kyoko-like. She is a very scientific personality, but she falls into what we call the tsundere trope, sort of.
Understood.
So yeah, there's that.
I don't like you, stupid.
Basically, yes. Pretty much exactly that.
Just trying to translate for those that are like, what?
Look, we're in anime territory now. You gotta adapt or die.
You gotta keep up with the lingo.
So, the main concept behind the game's tone and themes was apparently 99% science and 1% fantasy. That kind of checks out. There are like a couple moments in the game where it stops and explains black holes to you and stuff like that. Obviously, in real life, you're not going to turn a microwave into a time machine, but like, that's where the 1% fantasy comes in. The title Steins Gate, though, apparently has no specific meaning. Steins is merely taken from the German word Stein, which is the word for stone, and is also potentially a reference to Albert Einstein. Steins Gate in universe is something that Okabe references as some, like, personification of fate or something. And, like, the thing that makes the decisions for all the world and how things happen. Because, again, he's Shuni, and the worst thing he does is he'll pull out his phone and he'll talk to nobody as if he is talking to some, like, secret informant. I hate him for the first, like, half of the game. I hate him so much.
The dude watched the end of Full Metal Alchemist. I got it.
It's just, So, one of the original ideas for the phone system, though, apparently, was to try and incorporate the player's actual cell phone into the game. They did not specify how this would happen, but I am assuming you would send the emails through your phone. But then they abandoned this idea because they realized that doing so would potentially get them in hot water in terms of Japan's privacy laws. The one who came up with the phone trigger system, by the way, was writer Naotaka Hayashi, who apparently regretted doing so, because when he was asked if it would potentially be used in a sequel, he responded, "I certainly hope not," and claims that every time he had to write one of the emails for the game, he would think, who thought of this system? Especially, I assume, he's specifically talking about the time travel, the ones that are sent back in time, because they have actually a specific set of rules that they have to follow. Another challenge in writing was apparently to make sure that the game did not contain a lot of repeating text, since the plot does involve going back in time to relive events, sometimes multiple times. And this was one of the reasons that Hayashi was actually hesitant about the theme of time travel at first in general. His other worry being that he felt like it was kind of an overdone trope in sci-fi. It reviewed well on release. The PC version sits at an 87 on Metacritic. The English release was actually the 7th highest rated PC game of 2014. And if you want to know what kind of competition it had, number 1 and 2 that year were Kentucky Route Zero Act 3 and Dark Souls 2. Famitsu gave it their Game of Excellence award. And then in 2011, readers of Famitsu voted it the 6th, quote, most tear-inducing game of all time. I don't know if I'd put that at number 6, but sure. And in 2017, readers voted it the best adventure game of all time. It was nominated for Best Handheld/Mobile Game at the Golden Joystick Awards in 2015, which it ultimately lost to Fallout Shelter. So there's a mention of Fallout.
Interesting.
One notable instance of praise, though, came from Tomoya Asano, who is a producer, or at least was, I don't know if he still is, at Square Enix, who heavily complimented the game's scenario and cast, which led directly to Naotaka Hayashi, the guy we were talking about earlier, being brought on as one of the lead writers for Bravely Default. So Steins Gate resulted in the story of Bravely Default. So what has happened with Steins Gate since then? Well, it's kind of become its own sub-series. There are 2 spin-offs, being My Darling's Embrace in 2011, which is a more laid-back spin-off centered around romantic relationships between Okabe and the various women in the cast. You bet I bought that one. And I'm gonna play it, and it's probably not very good, but I don't care. And then Linear Bounded Phenagram in 2013, a collection of 10 side stories all set in different realities. A sequel, Steins Gate Zero, that takes place in the timeline following one of the non-true endings, came out in 2015. And then a remake, Steins Gate Elite, released in 2018, and it incorporates art and animation from the 2011 anime adaptation. Now, weirdly enough, when looking into this, and looking into how it did in reviews, Elite actually reviewed, really well. And yet, multiple people I've talked to that were fans of Steins Gate before I played have told me that Elite is not the version you want to play, and I don't know why. Including a YouTuber that I discovered recently who just does videos on, visual novels. And she specifically, name drops Steins Gate Elite as a game whose, art had the soul removed from it by doing this. So that might be part of it. I don't know. Eventually I will probably play Elite just to see, but we'll see. But it should be noted, both Elite and the original are available for purchase on Steam. So you can make that choice. A thematic sequel is currently in development, though, which I did not know until doing the research for this. It is under the working title of Steins ? And not much is known about the project currently. Being that they're calling it a thematic sequel, it's likely not going to involve any of the characters from the first game, but we'll have to see. Meanwhile, for the science adventure series in general, it has also continued. Robotics Notes, released in 2012. Chaos Child, which was a thematic sequel to Chaos Head in 2014, Occultic 9 in 2017, and most recently, Anonymous Code released in Japan in 2022, and it is releasing worldwide this Friday, September 8th, for PC, PS4, and Nintendo Switch. This is why I said this was an accidental called shot. This game was on the schedule for this episode before I knew that Anonymous Code existed.
That is a pretty good called shot. Also, it should be noted, I mean, you're probably seeing through the episode title and things like that. All of these titles in this series have semicolons between the two words.
Mm-hmm.
And like no spacing. It's like the only game series I can think of that does that.
Yeah. It's, I don't know the reason for it either. At all. Seems to just be a thematic choice. I don't know. However, just looking at how much Steins Gate content has been put out since the original game, and the fact that if you've heard any of the names of the Science Adventure series games, it's statistically Steins Gate. It's pretty clear that Steins Gate is the standout success of that series overall. Like, by a country mile. Apparently, the reason why the sequel being developed right now exists is because I guess they released, I think, a remake of Robotics Notes in the standard, like, Elite format, sort of. And it didn't sell half the copies the original Steins Gate sold in its first week. And so it turns out Steins Gate's the moneymaker in the Science Adventure series. And yeah, that's pretty plain to see. And as I mentioned before, very briefly, both Steins Gate and Steins Gate Zero have received anime adaptations, as well as an animated film that serves as a sequel to the original story's true ending. It's also gotten manga adaptations, and spin-offs, and light novel adaptations, and there's just a bunch of things that have come out of the Steins Gate series outside of games, too. It's nuts.
How is that original anime adaptation? I feel like that's what I also hear about when it comes to, like, the collection of things when it comes to Steins Gate, because there was a time where, like, I was adding, that original game to my Steam wish list and seeing that there was Zero and there's eventually Elite, and it's like, so there seems to be a lot. Have you heard anything about that original anime series?
I haven't watched it myself, but I do know that it is probably the more well-known version of Steins Gate. It's probably more well-known in the game. And we do have a friend who that's how she got through Steins Gate and experienced it, and she liked it a lot, and I've heard people say that it's a pretty good anime adaptation. Zero I have not heard anything about. And I did not know the movie existed until about 12 hours ago. Which is probably not a great sign. But I plan on watching basically all of that eventually. I'm one of those people that just likes to devour all the content of something I liked, even if there's a large chance that a lot of it sucks. But that's just the kind of person I am. I mean, I'm playing Persona 1, sort of, for God's sake. That game is awful, and I'm gonna push through it.
Oh, God. And then there's stuff going on with that, with, like, something else being ported with...
I still don't understand what that is.
What? It's so weird. It's so weird.
So, the composer we're going to talk about is Chiyomaru Sikura, who not only is one of the composers, he wrote 2 songs on the soundtrack, but he is also the founder of 5PB, which he founded in 2005 after leaving the record label Citron, and on Steins Gate in particular, he also served as producer and one of the writers. So he is considered the creator of the Science Adventure series. He actually fully bought Mages away from their previous owners in 2019, but just this year, in January 2023, he stepped down as the company's chairman and said he is now focusing on working as an executive producer within the company. This likely has something to do with the fact that the company posted a financial loss of $4.6 million in 2022.
Ouch.
I don't think the Famicom Detective Club remakes panned out as well as they thought it would. In terms of his discography, he's credited as doing at least one song on pretty much the entire Science Adventure series. The thing with him, though, is he doesn't really do soundtracks so much as he does, like, the opening. He'll compose the opening for a game, or the ending, or an insert song, anime style. And he's credited in some way in every single game under the Steins label specifically. This is not really surprising. Like I said, he is considered the creator of the series as a whole. In terms of his composing work, though, his very first game listed on Moby Games is called Taekwondo. It's a SNES game. And a couple of the names that I sort of recognized, and most of these are just, he did the intro song. You have Super Fire Pro Wrestling X Premium, hell of a title. F1 Pole Position 64. Princess Maker Go Go Princess, which I did not think Princess Maker would ever come up on this show, but here we are. Mega Dimension Neptunia 7. And Cyber Dimension Neptunia 4 Goddesses Online. And the remake of You Know, A Girl Who Chants Love at the Bound of This World, which is an older 1996 visual novel that actually served as one of the inspirations for Steins Gate. So, that's kind of a cool full circle thing. And he is credited for doing the opening to Warriors Orochi 4. But in terms of the full soundtrack in general, it was mainly composed by Takeshi Abo, who we talked about, for his work on Famicom Detective Club 2, arranging the remake back in episode 194. But it also includes work by Chiyomaru Sikura, Tatsushi Hayashi, and Yoshihiro Suda. So let's get into that Critical 5. And we're gonna start pretty anime with Critical track number 1. This is Skyclad no Kanosokusha. This song was one of the ones composed by Chiyomaru Sikura, who also wrote the lyrics. The vocals are by Kaneko Ito. This song serves as the game's OP, but it also happens to make an appearance during a very pivotal moment near the end of the game, which is actually like a really hype moment when this song just starts playing. It fits that moment perfectly. It's great. I really, really dig this song a lot. Specifically, I like the part near the end of the clip. The vocal bit. It's good. The vocalist is killing it here, Kaneko Ito. And just in general, I think this game kind of fits the tense atmosphere and some of the faster moments of Steins Gate, because Steins Gate does have a lot of like thriller type moments. And this really does a good job of introducing you to sort of the overall tone of the game.
It's more electronic house clubby in the chorus than I expected. But you know, it's good. It's catchy for sure. And I can definitely see why anytime an OP returns in the pivotal moment, like that's just hype for sure. Also, just more positive. I expected it to be like weirder, creepy, like science, almost like I don't know. I don't think Higurashi is like the right kind of, that's more like horror, but like kind of like somewhere between the two, I would have thought it would have landed.
I could see that. And to be perfectly honest, there's a couple tracks further on that do more match that sort of feeling. In fact, I think what matches that feeling just a little bit more is the critical track number 2. This is Gate of Steiner. This song was composed by Takashi Abo, and in fact, from here on, unless I say it was composed by somebody else, it was composed by Takashi Abo. This is the main theme of Steins Gate. It plays on the title screen, you can hear it in a couple spots in the game, and the melody that you hear at the beginning of the clip, you can actually hear that implemented in various other songs throughout the soundtrack, which is really nice. You can even make a version of this song your ringtone in the game, because you can change Okabe's ringtone. And I really like this piece. I think it gives a real sense of mystery. I think it fits better the tone you were expecting from the OP, because it has sort of this, especially at the beginning, it's not really in the clip, but the beginning has a very sort of, what would be the word to describe it?
It is at the end of the clip. It is a more like little spooky mystery, like da, da, yeah. That's it's definitely, I think, more the vibe that I would have imagined it goes with. But to me, the instrumentation of all of these electronic instruments together, it sounds just like the Ace Attorney series does for Gyakuten Saiban, like especially 5 and 6, just like the mid 2010s Ace Attorney games. It's like, oh, it's right there.
I could see that. I could 100% see. There are a couple of songs in here where I'm like, this feels like it was inspired by Ace Attorney, and it's possible that Ace Attorney returned the favor, if I'm right, seeing as Steins Gate is like a big name in the visual novel game.
Oh yeah, sure.
Anyways, let's go for a completely different tone, because when this game's not being tense and like really good in terms of being a drama, it's also just kind of funny and about a bunch of college students being idiots together. And that is best represented, I think, by critical track number 3, Laboratory. The song is basically the music of casual time in the lab with your friends, essentially. It plays usually when they're in the clubhouse. This song is put in the back of a lot of Okabe and Kurisu's bickering. It's a lot of fun. And I think it is a nice sense of... This game is pretty good at giving like moments of levity.
Yeah.
Especially once things start getting really real, which is, there is an exact moment where things get extremely real. And this game does a good job of balancing that. And I think this song and a couple other songs on the soundtrack are very good examples of sort of the tone that it'll go for. I also just really like the bouncing synth that plays like, it's not really the lead part, but it does add a lot bouncing between left and right channels. I love it.
It is a really nice change of pace as far as the mood goes, and a lot of interesting synths happening here between the modulation on the lead melody line, or like the bass and how good that sounds. Yeah, this is really, really nice to listen to. And I think you pick up on that really easily with this being the, all right, break the tension with the levity, for sure. Because yeah, I'm sure things get very dark very quickly. And yeah, if this is good time with friends in college, or you're bantering with that girl that you like and she totally doesn't like you, nope. Yeah, that chalk this track up to that for sure.
Also, I don't know about you, but when I think visual novel music, it's usually this.
It's something
not like this
like
specific
this, yes.
song, but like this is the most visual novel song I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah, I don't know if it's like inspired by other ones, or again, other ones use this as inspiration, but like, yeah, this is every visual novel probably should have a song like this.
Mm-hmm. But let's get right back into the more creepy, intense vibe with critical track number 4. This is Chaos Mind. Now, this is one where I could definitely hear, like, this feels Ace Attorney. Like, very, very Ace Attorney. But this is one of the songs that plays when there's a tense moment. Something possibly shocking has been discovered, or maybe it's happened, or maybe a realization has been had. I think this plays during, like, one of the escalation, oh god, this is getting a bit too real moments, but I can't remember if it does. But that's kind of what it reminds me of. There's a few songs with this specific tone on the soundtrack. We'll actually talk about one on the cutting room floor, but I think this one personally is my favorite.
It's really interesting because they are contemporaries of each other, especially when the originals were written. But, like, this has Zero Escape. This has Danganronpa all over it. Like, this is a body has been discovered kind of music. And does a really good job, I think, breaking down some of the instruments. You hear one of those synths, and they're just kind of almost start to, like, spiral apart and fray. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really neat to kind of represent, like, the what the heck is going on kind of mindset that I'm sure these characters are going through.
And lastly, on the Critical 5, being a visual novel of its kind, usually this is the case, it has multiple endings and then a true ending. So there's, I think, 5 endings, one for each of the girls in the game specifically, and then the true ending, obviously. And the song that plays at the credits of all the other endings is actually different from the one that plays in the true ending. And between you and me, and we'll talk about this in the cutting room floor, I like the one that plays in the other endings better. But if we're going to talk about one of them, it should probably be the one that plays when the final credit roll is happening. So this is critical track number 5, Another Heaven.
夢をつないだ時の誘惑嵐の後の青空がしみる幸せになぜ隠れているの悲しみの鐘僕らを試すよすれ違う優しさ
Song was composed by Yoshihiro Suda, lyrics by Junya Urishino, and vocals again by Kanako Ito. Like I said, this is the music that plays during the credits after the true ending, which, to be fair, it very emotionally fits the very last thing that happens in that game. Like, to a T. And I do think this is a good song. I might like the other credit song better, but again, if we're going to talk about one, it should be the one that ends out the game. And I do think that this one has the perfect emotional beat to sort of follow how the story of Steins Gate ultimately ends.
Yeah. I feel like for anime-like endings, it's usually more energetic than this, but if something that's heavy on the emotions, and if it hits that number 6 on list of making people cry.
I do very much like the specific ending of the game, to be fair.
I'm sure, but at the same time, like, this does sound like something that you need a little pick-me-up after it kind of wallops you in the emotions. So that checks out, and it's nice to hear, like, the just different instruments, like the acoustic guitar playing a prominent role here, and it just has a different emotion and energy to it.
Mm-hmm. But let's have a different emotion. Tracks of the cutting room floor. I got 2. And the first is actually another one of the songs that plays during tense and creepier moments. This is Suspicious Eyes. Again, more of the tense music for the game. Possibly, I think, plays at a moment when the group has wandered into some information that they probably should not have found or seen. And it is dire information as well. This is, I think, a very close second to Chaos Mind, but ultimately Chaos Mind won out. But again, this game has some music that is very good, both at giving these tense, creepy moments, and then stuff like Laboratory, which gives it a bit of a comedic relief, bit of levity to it. But I think this is the other best example of the former.
Yeah, this feels like that whole secret, dark organization, society thing that Okabe keeps going on about. Yeah, it feels like you kind of stumbled into the real truth of the world kind of thing. And really spooky stuff going on with the panning at the beginning of the piece. I mean, a little bit in the clip, but it's definitely disguised by the mixing of the other instruments. But yeah, okay. Once you start like getting in like the kind of synthetic choral sort of instruments going on there, yeah, that it communicates a darker, more foreboding truth.
I think the part that this plays in, I guess I should say, is probably one of my favorite moments in the game. Because it is genuinely like the exact moment that even Okabe in his head is like, oh, I can't treat this like a game anymore. We may have gone too far.
Mm-hmm.
Oops. And lastly, I mentioned the other credit song in the game. I really, really like the song. It plays in all the other endings except for the true ending. This is Unmei no Farfalla. This song was composed by Tatsushi Hayashi, lyrics were written by Karen, and vocals by Yui Sakakibara, or as she is credited at Phantasm. I think that's the band she's a part of. I couldn't figure it out. And again, credits for every ending except the true ending, so it has a bit more of a melancholic feel to it. So basically, almost all of the endings that aren't the true ending involve Okabe, like, giving up on preventing something he was trying to prevent. So this kind of fits that sort of tone. Especially, it fits my favorite ending, I think, a whole hell of a lot. I can't mention who that ending is, because it's a spoiler. But it's a very, very good ending. And I think this song is my favorite of the two credits themes, personally.
Yeah, I get that for sure. There's unfinished business with this one, but I also love the clock motifs that are going on with this one, which makes sense. I mean, time, right? But like the falling rhythm and the very deliberate rhythm of the da 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 da, and then you get the little side of snare drum hit that definitely sounds like a clock tick. That's really cool. And good on that for a game that is so heavy on time travel to kind of mix that in.
I agree. So what will I never forget about Steins Gate? Exceptionally good story. Again, maybe one of the best time travel plots that I can think of in general. And if you have an interest in visual novels, you should really give it a go. 100% it's worth your time. I think there is a reason it is the standout success of its series. And I haven't watched any of the anime or anything yet, like I said earlier. Eventually I will. They're all on my list, like all of them. And same with all of I'm pretty sure I have Elite and Zero and Linear Bounded Phenagram on my Steam wish list currently. I've already bought the dating sim one because of who I am as a person. And I plan on playing those at some point as well. So it definitely made a fan out of me. I'm very glad that I played it, and I could not recommend it enough.
Well, it's really good to hear. I should definitely check it out. Maybe as sales near the end of the year happen. It's $30 US right now at full price. Maybe a bit much, especially when you consider it goes down to like $8. So, I'll keep an eye out on that sale price, but might be worth jumping on. Thank you for presenting this. I've always been very confused on what Steins Gate actually is, but this sounds like the one worth checking out.
Yeah, for me, before playing, the knowledge I had was it's about time travel in some way, and I can recognize Kurisu, and that's where my knowledge ended. So, for a transition, we like to highlight a fan remix, a fan cover. This one was hard to find for a weird reason. And it's because when you search Steins Gate cover or Steins Gate remix, it's all the anime stuff.
Oh.
Because the anime is much more well known in terms of recognizability, which sort of makes sense. Watching a TV show is a bit more accessible than sitting down to read a 15-hour visual novel, to be fair, I guess. I don't know if it's 15 hours. It could be less than that. I don't remember. But I get it. I did find a synthwave remix of the theme Gate of Steiner, though, even though I had to dig to find this. And it is by YouTuber Mr. McNoggin, which is a great name. I salute you, sir. And it actually translates over to synthwave very well. I mean, it probably helps that it was synths in the first place, I assume. But yeah, it's very good. So please enjoy that, and we will be right back.
It only just occurs to me, have we talked about a Bethesda RPG on this show? I mean, we talked about Doom 2016. That was a long time ago, but that's not really a Bethesda RPG. In this, the week of another big, ya boy Todd Howard Bethesda RPG. Fittingly, let's talk about the last big successful one. This is Fallout 4. We're not going to talk about Fallout 76. That wasn't a game. That wasn't a thing. Fallout 4 released for PC, PlayStation 4, and Xbox One on November 10th, 2015. Apparently, the game launched in Japan on December 17th, 2015. It is currently part of Xbox Game Pass. I mean, that makes sense with Microsoft owning Bethesda now. And it is also part of the PS Plus Extra game catalog currently. But it was also part of the PlayStation Plus collection, when PlayStation 5 owners could redeem a collection of PS4 games at the beginning of the console's launch. Fallout 4 was among them. So if you have that collection, you may have it on PlayStation somewhere. A current gen update for Fallout 4 to bring it to 60 FPS on consoles, support for 4K, some bug fixes, some more mod support. was supposedly going to come out this year at some time at the end of last year in 2022. They said, something's coming in 2023. And they've not narrowed the date for that yet. I can imagine Bethesda Game Studios a little busy trying to get Starfield out the door first. But just wanted to put that out there that, hey, maybe at the end of 2023 here might be the time to return to Fallout 4. The game was developed by Bethesda Game Studios and published by Bethesda Softworks. Fallout 4 is an action role-playing game set in an open world, which can either be played in first or third person. While most of the gameplay carries over from Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas, the gun gameplay was given a bit of a lift, and it was handled by id Software, who were just about to release 2016's Doom.
I mean, if you're going to get anybody to fix your first-person shooter stuff, it's probably a pretty damn good choice.
Yeah, it's not going to be obviously the frenetic pace of 2016's Doom, but to have it feel better, have the shooting work. I also read comparisons that this game plays like Mass Effect cross with Borderlands. Like with Borderlands kind of shooting and the Mass Effect kind of RPG character interaction, freeze time with something called the Vault Tech Assisted Targeting System, or VATS, which returns from previous games, and that allows for slowed targeted shooting to mix up the real-time combat. Other new features in Fallout 4 include a layered armor system, base building, which certainly would be expanded in a Fallout Shelter mobile game that you mentioned in the Steins Gate half of the episode. But yeah, base building certainly a big thing in this game. There's a new dialogue system that players can apparently leave conversations at any time. It's a big feature that Todd Howard was hyping up. You can stop talking to them, or you can even just shoot them if you want to. Okay, Todd. And there's also a crafting system which implements every lootable object in the game. Players can spend experience points in 7 special statistics, and that would be the 7 categories of strength, perception, endurance, charisma, intelligence, agility, and luck. Special. And then you have about 275 perks and abilities to unlock, depending on how you want to roleplay your character. When it comes to the story of Fallout 4, we kind of have to, especially since we haven't talked about Fallout on this show before, we kind of have to give it the overall framework of the Fallout universe, because the big inciting incident is the Great War, a war between the United States and China over natural resources that ended in a nuclear holocaust in 2077. And so the story of Fallout 4 begins in 2077. Oddly enough, the day of those nukes dropping. And it's the first game in the franchise to show this pre-Fallout of the Great War. In Sanctuary Hills, located near Concord, Massachusetts, the player character is at home with their spouse, their son Sean, and Codsworth, a robotic butler. A Vault Tech representative shows up at their door and admits the family into Vault 111, the local Fallout shelter. Moments later, a news bulletin warns of an incoming nuclear attack, as nukes have already hit New York City and Philadelphia, triggering the civil defense sirens and general panic. As the detonation occurs, the family evacuates to the vault, where they are tricked into entering cryogenic tubes and frozen alive. After an unknown number of years, they are reawakened by 2 strangers, who murder the player's spouse and kidnap Sean. The player is put back into cryogenic sleep and awakens again when the life support system malfunctions. It is now 210 years to the day after the nukes dropped, in 2287, and the player, now nicknamed the sole survivor of Vault 111, vows to avenge their spouse's death and find Sean. After the sole survivor finds Codsworth and a loyal German shepherd named Dogmeat to get their bearings, they explore the Boston and New England area known as the Commonwealth, and align with one of 4 groups. There's the Institute, a secretive organization that specializes in the creation of artificial humanoids called synths. There's the Brotherhood of Steel, an anti-synth faction hoping to preserve and control technology in the Commonwealth. There's the Minutemen, a faction that aims to drive out raiders and other threats out of the Commonwealth. And the Railroad, a secretive organization dedicated to rescuing synths from the Institute. So the big questions here: which group will the sole survivor support? Who killed your spouse? And why was Sean kidnapped? And where are they now? So, Joe, this is where I'll ask you, what are our experiences with Fallout 4?
Basically nothing. We were talking about it before recording, but I've never been able to get into a Bethesda RPG ever. I tried Fallout 3 at one point. I tried New Vegas. I tried Skyrim twice. And I bounced off of them every time. I just got bored and I bounced off of them every time. So Fallout 4, I did not even give a chance. Starfield, I don't care to try it. I'm glad people are excited. I'm not. I just don't care. When I think of Fallout 4, though, I think of the final Pam. See, the McElroy brothers, specifically Griffin McElroy and Justin McElroy, do a show on the internet called Monster Factory, where they go to games that have, let's say, extensive character creators, and they work to make the ugliest character they possibly can. And then they make essentially a, character out of that character, and they play the game with them. And when they did Fallout 4, they created a ghoulish-looking woman, and named her the Final Pam. And in lore, she became, basically the strongest thing in the universe. And had her husband a giant rad roach. And it was just a lot of things that happened. But the Final Pam is basically what I will think of anytime Fallout 4 comes up. I'll also think about being in the room at Bethesda E3 2019 and seeing the people who definitely were not paid to be at the front try to start a standing ovation when Todd Howard walked out on stage.
Ah, yes, to deliver the Fallout 76 reveal to reception. For me, Bethesda RPGs I'm kind of in a similar boat, but I haven't really played any. They seem too daunting, and they seem like things that would be up my alley. I'm a big fan of open world RPGs. But something about Bethesda games make it a little tough. I was trying to get myself into Fallout 4 to the point where I had the means to be like, I'm going to buy that nice collector's set for Fallout 4. I at one point owned that dumb little plastic Pip-Boy because, second screen experiences. Things that have not held up well in gaming, the industry, and second screen experiences, boy. So I really wanted to try with Fallout 4, and I never got around to playing it. Maybe with this current gen update coming, what they referred to it as the next gen update, I guess, but it's current gen now. I might be interested to go back to it, especially having the game through Xbox Game Pass or owning it through the PlayStation Plus collection. Either one. It sounds like it'd be my kind of cup of tea, but maybe I try Starfield first and see how I get along with that, because I feel like people make a lot of comparisons to a game like Fallout 4, and that makes sense with the Todd Howard of it all. Well, development on Fallout 4 began after the downloadable content was complete for Fallout 3. And this was just in the early ideas pre-production stage, because the majority of Bethesda game studios are working on a little game called The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. So they're busting their butts on Skyrim, and after DLC support for that was finished in 2013, Fallout 4 entered full production from mid-2013 to mid-2015. They used a modified version of Skyrim's creation engine for the game. And all of this led by director Todd Howard. For the first time in the Fallout series, the player's character, the sole survivor, is fully voice acted, including all decision-based dialogue options. Brian T. Delaney and Courtney Taylor are the two player character voice actors. So if I played the game, I'd be real tempted to choose a female lead protagonist, because Jack from Mass Effect going through the Fallout world? Yeah, sign me up for that. Apparently there are 111,000 lines of voice-acted dialogue across all of the characters in the game. Quite a lot, especially if you're going to tout a new dialogue system. The game supports mods through official tools with the Creation Kit, which rolled out to consoles later after some time on PC. Makes sense, PC mods, but eventually rolled out to consoles. Xbox was the clear, it's like a PC, so it'll be easier, but it eventually made its way to PlayStation 4. This would eventually evolve into Fallout 4 supporting Creation Club, which was announced at E3 2017 as an in-game system to purchase and download custom content, to have modders get paid in a way for the support that they do on modding Bethesda games. As far as Fallout 4 goes, though, it was teased before and then revealed at E3 2015. In addition to the standard edition of the game, a collector's edition was announced, which includes a wearable replica of the Pip-Boy, an in-game device on the player's wrist. Except when it translates to real life, it's a chunky bit of plastic that comes with molds for the smartphones at the time, because it is able to house a smartphone device, though only certain sizes. And it can run the second screen functionality of the game, because it came with iOS and Android companion apps that mirrored what was going on in the game. A neat idea at the time, but man, second screen features in games sure were a thing that fizzled out quickly when developers realized that it wouldn't catch on with the public. The game reviewed well, with a Metacritic average of 88 on Xbox One, 87 on PS4, and 84 on PC. Critics praised the world depth, player freedom, overall amount of content, the crafting, the story, the characters, and the soundtrack. Criticism was mainly directed at the game's simplified RPG elements compared to its predecessors, and technical issues at the launch of the game, because it wouldn't be a Bethesda RPG without some tech issues. Though from what I've heard, Starfield's hanging in there pretty okay.
I've seen a couple of things from Starfield. Granted, they're things that I've been told have been, hit by a day one patch, but I've seen a couple of faces disappearing. They need to be there. It's tradition.
Yeah, I was going to say, did you see the AC Unity faces and eyeballs? Yeah, that was certainly something, I guess. The game sold 1.2 million copies on Steam in its first 24 hours of release, and it also set the Steam record at the time for the most concurrent online players for a game that was not developed by Valve. I know that's a lot of words, but basically it beat Grand Theft Auto V's record at the time. Of course, in years since, things like PUBG, Fortnite, things like they'd go bonkers. But at the time, that game was a pretty big deal. Bethesda apparently shipped 12 million units to retailers within the first 24 hours. That's pretty impressive, but yet there has been no final official number to brag about. All Pete Hines says, the chief marketing officer at Bethesda, he's like, the Fallout 4 outsold Skyrim in the same launch period window, which was like the first couple of years. So it outsold Skyrim, but I mean, granted, Skyrim's had plenty of versions to tack onto those numbers in the years since, but at least for the first couple years of launch, it did pretty well. The game was nominated for 3 awards, including Game of the Year and Best Score/Soundtrack at the Game Awards. It was nominated for 5 DICE Awards and won 3: Outstanding Achievement in Game Direction, Role-Playing Game of the Year, and Game of the Year. And it was nominated for Music at the BAFTAs and won Best Game. I did not recall Fallout 4 winning Best Game at the BAFTAs and DICE in a year of The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt and Metal Gear Solid 5. Some solid games in 2015, but I did not recall Fallout 4 doing that well at some of the big shows.
Yeah, I actively have no memory of that. Same year as Metal Gear Solid 5? Really? You went to Fallout? Really?
Yeah. Like,
okay.
I know Metal Gear's story, kind of crap the bed, but damn.
That game's fun.
Yeah. Yes, it is. Fallout 4 had quite the legacy, though. There were 6 DLC packs that were released with a season pass. These would be Automatron, Wasteland Workshop, Far Harbor, which was the big story expansion into Maine. There's Contraptions Workshop, Vault Tech Workshop, and Nuka World. All of these would be released by the end of August 2016. Then Fallout 4 VR would be released as a standalone game on December 4th, 2017, and that would be released for PC on the HTC Vive platform. Fallout 76 was a thing. We don't talk about Fallout 76. Yikes. Obviously, Bethesda Game Studios then got busy after that with a little game called Starfield. And then they also announced that The Elder Scrolls 6 will be a thing. And then apparently stupidly, as if that weren't, setting their plans out long enough, in June 2022, Todd Howard stated in an interview that Fallout 5 would begin development after the completion of The Elder Scrolls 6. So, we won't see that game for another 7 years.
I give it 10.
I was trying to be optimistic with 7.
I'm also being optimistic.
The soundtrack for Fallout 4 has music composed by Inon Zur. And Inon Zur was born on July 4th, 1965 in Israel. I'm not sure we've covered a composer born in Israel, but that's a first. At the age of 5, Inon Zur was trying to compose harmonies with his mother's singing, and he became inspired by classical music. He learned to play French horn as a child, studied piano by the age of 8, and was studying music composition by the age of 10. He graduated from the Music Academy of Tel Aviv and then spent 4 years, as you do, in the Israeli military. He emigrated to the United States in 1990 to study at the Dick Grove School of Music for a year, and then under private tutor Jack Smalley, who was a television music composer, and as well as other different tutors, for about 2 years at UCLA. He began his career in 1994 by working on soundtracks for movies, but then he signed on to compose for Fox Family for 6 years, and he made soundtracks for various children's television shows like Digimon and Power Rangers. But his career then took off with work on video games, as he wanted to work somewhere, quote, more intriguing, more advanced, and basically a place that people really appreciate music more. Inon Zur has been described as, quote, internationally recognized as one of the A-list orchestral composers in the video games industry. He named some of his musical influences as classical artists such as Sergei Prokofiev, Igor Stravinsky, and Beethoven, movie composers like John Williams and Jerry Goldsmith, and jazz artists like George Gershwin and Henry McPhee. Rather than compose music based around the setting in the game where it will be played, Zur composes music around the emotion that he wants the player to feel at that point in the game. He says he feels that he is considered in the industry to be a very fast composer, which he attributes to his tendency to compose music intuitively, rather than spending a lot of time planning it out. And when he's not composing, Zur likes to play video games, especially those that he has composed for, as well as play basketball and spend time with his family. And you can follow him on Twitter at Inon Zur. That's INONZUR. His discography is quite interesting. Inon Zur has worked on a wide variety of games, which include titles like Star Trek New Worlds, Baldur's Gate 2, Throne of Baal, Icewind Dale 2, Siberia 2, Men of Valor, Prince of Persia, Warrior Within and the Two Thrones, Crisis, Fallout 3, Prince of Persia, the 2008 game, Dragon Age Origins, Fallout New Vegas, World of Tanks, Dragon Age 2, Dragon's Dogma, Soul Calibur 5, Fallout 4, Eagle Flight, Siberia 3, Fallout 76, PUBG Mobile, The Elder Scrolls Blades, Outriders, and most recently, Starfield. So yeah, he's been the go-to guy for Todd Howard, among plenty of other video game experience. With his TV work, he composed for Power Rangers, a whole bunch of seasons there, like Turbo, In Space, Lost Galaxy, Lightspeed Rescue, and Time Force. He has Digimon written down, but I wish I knew the difference of what was originally composed for Digimon Adventure in Japan versus what needed to be composed in America for Fox. Similarly, Escaflowne is on his discography. And like, I don't know what the difference is between the original compositions in Japan and what needed to be carried over.
Oh, I did not expect that one to show up. All right.
There's also TV shows like Big Bad Beetleborgs and Beetleborgs Metallics and Mystic Knights of Tir Nanog. There's also some film work he's done. Again, some Fox family projects like Casper, A Spirited Beginning, the direct-to-DVD or something, I get direct-to-VHS sequel to Casper. And then I think the movie's called Rusty the Great Rescue. It's also sometimes called Rusty A Dog's Tale. There was also Digimon Adventure 02 Revenge of Diaboromon, which I feel like I watched at some point in my Digimon fandom way back in the day. So that's kind of cool. He's also done a ton of movie trailer work. So like most of the things listed are, there's just like a whole section of like, compose the music for the trailer to this movie. So man's done a lot.
We should probably cover a Digimon game at some point, huh?
I mean, maybe. We've certainly done plenty of Pokemon games, that's for sure. But are the Digimon games any good? That's right, world. I'm putting that out there.
I believe there are at least a couple that are considered to be pretty. I need Cyber Sleuth. I think is supposed to be very good.
Certainly the recent one. Yeah.
But I don't. I have zero experience with any kind of Digimon in any way, shape, or form. But I know a lot of people that do. So
I still stand by what I said. When it comes to Fallout 4, Inon Zur did compose the music for it, and because Zur felt that Fallout 4 had a more personal story, he made the piano take a more prominent role in the game's score. He said he combined a real piano with an electric piano to make a, quote, sound that is really round and not bright at all, but very lush. In addition, he crafted the soundscapes with unorthodox instruments, focusing on 3 elements. There's classical instruments, electronic instruments, and a non-musical instrument or an ethnic/primitive instrument. Players could immediately tell what sort of area they were in based on the background instrumentation. And between Zur's compositions and the 40s, but mostly 50s and sometimes 60s vibe that the aesthetic of Fallout tries to go with in their post-apocalyptic art of the world that they kind of go in. They bring in a lot of music from like the 1950s. And so when you combine that all together, it's a very varied musical experience, especially in Fallout 4. And we'll show the range of this here in the 5 critical tracks for the game. We have to start with, obviously, Fallout 4 main theme. A big theme for Fallout 4 seems to be trying to find hope in a terrible situation. And, this kind of positivity resonates in this main theme of the game, which I think plays on the title screen. But if it doesn't, since I don't have experience playing the game, it is definitely the main leitmotif. It carries over in different tracks. There's like a battle track that is like an epic version of this theme, which is driven by that piano. And you can hear that, of course, heavily supported by the orchestra. I believe I also read that generally when Inon Zur composes something that needs an orchestra, he likes to conduct that orchestra. That's a neat little touch. But yeah, this is definitely the big one, even at the beginning of the piece, which obviously is not in the clip, but it starts from that piano and only builds to this climax that's here in the clip. But yeah, this melody is the one for Fallout 4. It's not like it's representing a Fallout franchise theme or anything like that, but definitely the theme that is crafted for this more personal, hopeful journey.
Where have I heard this before? It wouldn't have been in Fallout 4. It's pretty good, honestly. I do think I agree that the piano gives it a... I've never thought of it that way, but yeah, it does have a more personal sort of feeling to it. When it's mainly an acoustic piano, I don't quite understand what the lush comment means when listening to this, but I'm not a music person, so... I wouldn't know. Yeah, this is good. It works very well as the main theme of a game like Fallout 4.
Yeah, maybe it just has like a more full sound instead of like feeling sparse or too, like it doesn't really cut through. It just has a more like voluminous EQ on it. Number 2 on the Critical 5, I think is continuing that same sort of spirit, but using some different instruments along the way. And this track is called Rebuild, Renew. Wow, the instruments that are here. Can we just say off the top, bagpipes? Bagpipes. That's something that's powerful. That's really neat. Also, like some stringed instrument, maybe like a sitar in here that kind of just serves as like the backing kind of rhythmic piece here. And then, of course, that piano coming in at the end to round it all out. Just sounds so good. Different fans, commenters noted how they would hear this entering Diamond City, which is definitely one of the big cities in the game, especially early on as you're still getting your bearings in the Boston area. And it just seems to be like a city theme that kind of has this feeling of, growing a civilization from nothing, as you'll do as you start to do more of like the base building and things like that. Gorgeous instrumentation. Love the instruments here. and just seems to be really on brand with the theme. Joe, can you guess what is referred to as Diamond City, especially when it comes to the Boston area?
Could it possibly be... I don't think I know anything about Boston. Oh no, I've been there. How do I not know anything about Boston?
Think of that sports ball.
That gives me even less information. I don't know anything about the sports ball. Oh God.
The baseball diamond, as it were. Fenway Park and its ruins in Boston with the Boston Red Sox. Because as it is today, Fenway Park is like the second oldest ball field in the entire country. But you know what? Who says it couldn't last for another 250 plus years?
See, when I hear Diamond City, all I think about is WarioWare. That's the only place my brain can go at this point.
I don't think his mini games are showing up with the VAT system.
That's a shame. They should fix that. Is there a patch to address that? The first thing that comes to mind when I hear the song is this sounds like what Hollow Knight would sound like were it given an orchestra to do its soundtrack.
I can see that. That's nice.
It sounds very similar to some of the feeling that I think a lot of the area music in Hollow Knight gives.
I think that's a good, apt comparison. Very nice. But that song from the 1950s, and there are many, but the one that really jumped out at me as someone who did not play the game but was very prone to its marketing, is here, number 3 on the Critical 5. And this is called Atom Bomb Baby.
Atom bomb baby, loaded with power, radioactive as a TV tower, a nuclear fission in her soul, loves with the electronic control. Atom bomb baby, little atom bomb, I want her in my wigwam. She's just the way I want her to be, a million times hotter than TNT. Bum, 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 bum.
Oh, these lyrics are very unfortunate. Oh no. Oh, that sure is the 50s. Oh boy.
It sure is. Yeah, So, this is a song from the 5 Stars. These are the performers who performed this song in 1957 with a song that was originally written by J.F. Young. Yeah, definitely of the era where you're being spooked with the idea of atom bombs.
Also, why mention wiggle? Why?
Yeah. Also, yes. Probably the only song that we'll ever mention on the show, which will have wigwams in its lyrics. Oh my goodness!
Just so folks know, that shouldn't be in this song for multiple reasons. The least of which is, what are you talking about?
So yeah.
What?
Despite all of that, this song can appear on Diamond City Radio, and it sure was used in the marketing for this game, where there are so many songs that could be played on the radio in these games that capture that 1950s aesthetic, but this one popped up and I'm like, oh, I've heard that probably more than I should, to be honest. And just write that bop da biada bop da biada. I think that's just play that, and that's all you need to know. That is Fallout to a T, and specifically this game, Fallout 4. So yeah, of all the songs like that, that's the one that deserves to be here, whether or not the lyrics are any good or not.
Just unfortunate lyrics. I mean, it's not Bethesda's fault. The song was written 50 years before, 30 years before video games existed, but wow. Okay, 50s, whatever you say.
It's a big yikes, but I think it's the one to represent the game, unfortunately. I mean, do you remember this being played during E3 2015 at all?
Maybe. My memories of the Fallout reveal are kind of hazy. I know I was watching. I know for sure I was watching, but it might sound sort of familiar. I don't know. My memories are gone from that point. That was too long ago.
I get that. That's fair. Another track that just shows, I think, the instrumental diversity on this soundtrack would be number 4 here on the Critical 5. This track is called Imagine Utopia. Now that's a spooky theme, so it's fitting that it is apparently the theme of the Institute. That secret organization. There you go, secret organizations. I don't know if that's maybe a stretch. But they're kind of terrifying the members that live in the Commonwealth by kidnapping people and performing experiments to maybe turn them into synths. And so when you have a theme that is sinister, kind of hopeful, and yet mysterious all wrapped in one, you got these bells, these synths, this woodwind that's kind of running through it all. A lot of Uncharted Worlds vibes from Mass Effect in here, to think of like the futurism that they're trying to do with creating these synthetic humanoids. And yeah, it just kind of creates this creepy atmosphere that you go from the main theme to this, and it's a big swing on the pendulum.
It does remind me a lot of the tone of some of the music we talked about earlier from Steins Gate. Kind of, honestly.
Oh, yeah.
There's a very, very similar vibe to it.
I'd agree with that. Yeah, it's a good parallel to go back to, especially when it's the big secret organization trying to do creepy stuff. But then battle must come into play when it comes to using VATS and shooting big monstrosities out there in the wastelands. And this track represents number 5 on the Critical Tracks for Fallout 4. It's called Rise and Prevail. A commenter on YouTube says, this happens when you're surrounded in a melee between super mutants, raiders, rust devils, rogue automatrons, a legendary alpha deathclaw, and oh, by the way, 3 idiot settlers. You're in combat, your backs are up against the wall, you're against all odds. And yet that big swell happens in the clip, and yeah, that orchestration really comes through nicely with the horns kind of punching through and just feeling epic, honestly. And again, it's a nice swing to hear what's possible on this soundtrack. Inon Zur doing just great work overall, and it carries over, I'm sure, throughout all of his games. But Fallout 4, it's a good soundtrack, better than I gave it credit for. Honestly, I picked this game for just like, you know what, it's Starfield week. Let's talk about an Inon Zur game finally. And a Todd Howard joint like Fallout 4 seems like a pretty good one.
Against All Odds is a very good way to describe this song. It has an extremely triumphant sort of feeling to it. At least the clip does. And yeah, I really, really dig that. It feels almost fantasy-ish, but like, obviously being a sci-fi game, this isn't quite fantasy, but I think it blends those two things really well. And yeah, I can definitely hear this as you like emerge from some battle where the odds were severely stacked against you. And hey, you're the winner. You did it.
For tracks on the cutting room floor, I have 2. I'm not sure they could be more different from each other or really anything else on the Critical 5, but here we go. The first one is called The Commonwealth. So the Commonwealth is pretty early on in the soundtrack, which would suggest that it's definitely as you as the sole survivor are like starting to walk out into the world of 2287 for the first time and explore this area that is now known as the Commonwealth in like the Boston, New England area, and just how desolate things are and how ruined things are. I mean, as far as you know, before, you had your spouse killed and your child kidnapped, you were living the good life. Everything was all good. You haven't seen what, nuclear holocaust has wrought onto the land. And this, I feel, captures that really well. I mean, that flute that comes in through is like the only spark of possible hope in a really depressing soundscape. And, wow, I think this does a really good job kind of expressing that. And, this really, I think, taps into the emotion that Zur talks about writing to, right? Like, it's not like, oh, what's representative of Boston? It's like, how would you feel if you stumbled upon this for the first time?
I think it does a very good job of getting the vibe of the feeling of somewhere familiar being made unfamiliar, and like sort of the creepy, sad feelings that would go along with it. Like that's the general gist that I get, which matches up a lot with what you were saying was the gist you were getting. It feels like it brings about that sort of almost uncanny, sad feeling really well.
On the total opposite end of the spectrum, we get a track like this, and this other one on the cutting room floor is called Good Neighbor.
Took a dive with the swans out in the commons with nothing on. The mutant stopped to savor all my bad behavior. It's all in a day's work when you're a good neighbor.
Yeah, I didn't think we'd be getting a sultry lounge singer here, would ya?
Yeah, that sure came out of nowhere, all right.
Yeah, because the game featured a collaboration with singer/actress Linda Carter, who was announced to write and perform original songs for the game. She would play this role of Magnolia, who is a singer in the Good Neighbor area of the game. Yes, TV's original Wonder Woman is not only on the vocals for this song as this lounge singer Magnolia in game, but she also co-wrote the song with John Jarvis. So yeah, this only plays in the third rail, which is this nightclub that Magnolia sings in. But you know what? We do like ourselves some lounge music, and it was a special part of the game's soundtrack. So Wonder Woman as a nightclub singer, y'all. Here it is.
Yeah, this came out of nowhere. You are right, though. We do like our lounge singing on this show, and this is a pretty good example. Yeah, this is nice. This definitely deserved a shout out.
So what will I never forget about Fallout 4? That big dumb plastic pit boy that I no longer have. But you know what? It does make me think of like I should try a Bethesda RPG at some point. Maybe when the update finally rolls around for current gen consoles. Maybe I give that a shot then. But in the meantime, everyone's talking about Starfield. And we'll see how that all goes. But yeah, I really liked what I learned about Fallout 4, and it made me think just like, yeah, I should play this. Everything tells me like I would like this, but we'll see.
For me, it's the final Pam and her metal husband and Rochi, her other husband, I think. And there was a baby involved at some point that was also a roach. I don't remember. That was a weird video. It's a good video. People should watch it.
That does sound super tempting. It does sound like the different romantic interests in the game are all possible depending on if you play as a man or a woman. So there's also that for 2015. Kudos. All right. Well, secret organizations and time jumps and things like that. That's literally about it that could be found between Steins Gate and Fallout 4. Also very different soundtracks, but also both very good. And that will do it for us this week on Original Soundchat. You can find me on Twitter at Pete Speakeasy. Joe is over at String Pixel. The video version of the show is on the Rhymes with Asia YouTube channel, but it's that MP3 podcast version that you want, and that's hosted by Anonymous Dinosaur at anondino.squarespace.com. That's where Joe's other podcast, Smasherpieces, is hosted, and you can find Smasherpieces and Original Soundchat wherever you get your podcasts on catchers all around the globe, from Apple Podcasts to Google Podcasts to Spotify, where we have a feed of podcast episodes, but we also have a playlist on Spotify of video game music. If we talk about a track on this show and it's on Spotify, it gets added to this big, huge playlist. Joe, what's being added this week?
Both of these are on Spotify, so they'll both be thrown on.
At the very least, the Fallout 4 soundtrack is. Not sure if Atom Bomb Baby or Good Neighbor are.
Yeah, that's true.
They come from different collections of Fallout 4 music, but at least the other one's from Inon Zur. That's good to know. It'll be added. And then when you're done listening, you can find the show on social media at Soundchat OST. Leave some feedback for us. Let us know how we're doing with these episodes. What did we miss on our lists? And give us some suggestions for games to cover in the future. All right, Joe, who are we talking about next week?
We'll find out together next week, because I still don't know. I don't know how I'm going to approach it, but we'll find out.
It's going to be a time. You said it's anime, and it sure is anime. I will be talking about Hideo Takakura. All right, to play us out, there are a lot of great themes in Fallout 4, but I feel like the one I always knew and came back to was that Fallout 4 main theme. And it was neat to see YouTuber Squid Physics, great name, do a cover of the Fallout 4 theme where he plays all of the instruments, and it's really nice and it sounds so authentic. So really enjoyed that. Hopefully you do too. Thanks so much for listening this week on Original Soundchat. We'll see you next time. Take care.